a massive weekend for football news. And this morning, that is Monday morning, we've just learned that Jose Mourinho has been sacked by Spurs. No question of him resigning. He was sacked, and that is perhaps not such a big surprise. The other really big story that emerged within the last 24 hours is the idea that a breakaway group of clubs will form a European Super League. There are 12 clubs involved, and just so that you know who they are, it's the Big Six, as they're called in England: Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City, Chelsea and Tottenham. And in Europe, Real Madrid, Barcelona in Spain, Juventus also in Italy, and the two Milan clubs, Inter and AC Milan. Significantly, it's very significant, Bayern Munich are not going to join. They're boycotting it. Also PSG, France's biggest club, refusing to join this breakaway movement, which is a stunning revelation. It's being backed by JP Morgan, an investment bank, to the tune of $6 billion. And it would, of course, as Alex Ferguson put it last night, it would destroy the last 70 years of professional football in Europe. And one had the distinct impression that even though his own club, Manchester United, have signed up, he is not in favour of it. The most memorable rant in the last 24 hours, and I call it that because it was a rant. It was Gary Neville who was spitting fire and brimstone all over the place and wanted the English clubs to be immediately relegated and Fulham to be given life membership of the Premier League and all that kind of nonsense. But we're joined on the line now by somebody who doesn't talk nonsense, one of the greatest players we've ever produced, anyone's ever produced, and one of the best judges of the game, John Giles. John, it's been a hell of a 24 hours. We just start with what would have been a big story, but is now a lesser story, sacking Jose Mourinho from Spurs. It was on the cards, wasn't it?
I think it was on the cards from the time he joined, Damon.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think he was ever suited for Spurs. Having managed Chelsea, and it goes against the Spurs supporters, and I think a lot of the Spurs supporters, really, really liked Pochettino.
Yes.
And Pochettino was really badly treated, in my opinion, by Spurs.
Yes.
He got to the Champions League, as we know.
Yeah.
He was in the Champions League for 4 seasons, and he'd no money to spend. He did a terrific job. And then when they were sacking him, he said, well, he's never won anything.
Yeah.
But he performed miracles to keep them in top four for a few seasons and get to the Champions League final. So I think the attitude of the Spurs supporters, I don't think they would have liked that keen on Mourinho anyway, but I think they did feel for Pochettino. So I don't think he had the goodwill of the supporters when he came into the club anyway.
No, and of course, there is another issue with Mourinho. He is a narcissist. It is all about him most of the time. And the style of football he favours, I think, is... it's a counter-attacking style. It isn't in the Spurs tradition, by the way, as I'm sure no one knows better than you. It was Danny Blanchflower, who, the great Spurs captain of the double-winning team, who coined the phrase, the glory game. Mourinho doesn't play the glory game, John.
Well, it's funny enough, I think if a manager's winning, I don't think the supporters really had that pushed about it. They might say, well, we could be more attractive, but if they're winning, they're winning. And the fact is, he wasn't winning. If you go back to his Chelsea days, right, he wasn't doing anything different to Chelsea that he's doing today. But the fans loved him. He was winning the league and he was winning the cup, and he was very successful in the way he was doing it. And I think what happens with him when it's not happening, then it's never his fault. This is the big problem that he has with the players. it's their fault. It happened to Chelsea in the later days, and I think that's what happens at Spurs as well. I mean, he made the comment not so long ago when he was asked about not seeing games out in the way that he used to. In other words, when they were winning, they didn't win the match. And of course, he made the statement, the coach is the same, the players are different.
That was last week. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in other words, I'm the same. I'm doing my stuff. I'm still good. It's just these blooming idiots I've got who are not doing it. Well, he didn't quite say that, but that's what he implied. And that's the way the players pick it up. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, you know in your career, and I know in my career, one of the big things Revy and the top managers, they never criticise players publicly, Eamon.
No.
They could have a right go at you and tell you in the dressing room in front of players and that, but whatever happened in the dressing room stayed in the dressing room. And you never saw Matt Busby and indeed Don Revy in my managers criticise any of us publicly. Have a right go at you in the dressing room, all right. Mourinho was always criticising the players publicly, even the Spurs players. You look at his situation with Gareth Bale, for example, Dele Alli.
Yes.
You know, Alderweireld there a few weeks ago. I mean, if they're not winning and not, he falls out with everybody. So I think I think a lot of people, I think Spurs people, particularly supporters, made him welcome. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and there was, there's a history with Mourinho, and I want to look a little bit, just for a few moments, at that history, John. He was very successful at Porto, of course.
Yes.
And they won the Champions League, Porto. And he did it when he had no checkbook, as it were. And he then went on to win it with Inter. And Inter, there was no checkbook there either. There was a lot of sort of veteran players. He built a team. He went to Chelsea, of course. Was very successful there with great players like John Terry, Didier Drogba, Frank Lampard. Really, really outstanding team. One of the best English teams we've ever seen. But there comes a point in a manager's career when they don't get the plum jobs. In other words, he went to United. He had to go to United at a time when the club was struggling, after Van Gaal had bought a lot of, not great players. And then it broke down at United, much as it has at Spurs because of criticism of players. And then he's looking for a job. The big jobs now he's not a favourite for. There was a time when he went to Real Madrid. The best job and the worst job in Europe. The best in terms of the players you'll be working with, the worst in terms of longevity. And he's in that cycle now where he had to take not the ideal job. And at that point, and I think he's at this point now, it's hard to see where Mourinho goes from here, John. It
is, Eamon. It is, Eamon. It changes so quickly,
Yes.
He was. I don't think he was ever going to be the type of individual who was going to build a dynasty.
No. No.
Not like Ferguson did. Ferguson there was 20-odd years. I don't think he has that temperament. I think once he's losing, or begins to lose, he has to hit out that it's not him.
Yes.
It has to be the players. And as soon as he started, like when he did at Manchester United, for example, he wasn't there very long when they weren't doing so well, and he hit out loads of players, really, really publicly and very badly. The lad, the Shaw at left back, for example.
Yes, he treated him extremely bad. He said he was overweight, and Shaw has just come back now and had a good season last season and an outstanding season. He's back in the England squad. But it took him a while to get over the injuries.
A long time.
And the treatment.
And the treatment, Evan. Yeah. And when he said after one match, when he played well, he said, that's because he was near me on the touchline. They could tell him what to do.
Yeah.
But it was always public. It was always public with players, what he was doing. I think when he went to Chelsea, he had a lot of great players, and they got off to a good start. I think once he gets off to good starts, then he lets it run. And it's obviously, then he's taking the credit for them.
Yeah.
But as soon as he goes to Manchester United and Spurs, where they haven't got on to such a great start, then he hits out. It's not him; it's the players, and it's a surprise sacking today because as we know him, they play in that league, the old League Cup final on next weekend.
On Sunday they play in the Carabao Cup final. It is it's an extraordinary time to sack your coach.
He must have made his mind up, Eamon, and then thought, well, I've got to do it now, because if they win the Carabao Cup on the weekend, I won't be able to sack him.
Exactly. Okay.
Okay.
That's the end of Jose for now. We'll see who leads the team out for the Carabao Cup final, which incidentally is against Manchester City, and I think it's next Sunday. Now, John, the European Super League, it's an idea that has been around for a very long time in terms of chatter. But it was hard to see that chatter being translated into something concrete. Now it is. Yesterday, 12 of Europe's most powerful clubs announced that they had reached an agreement. In fact, the announcement came at midnight English time, which is 1 a.m. European time. 12 of the biggest clubs, 6 of them are English, and the 2 big Spanish clubs are in it as well, Real Madrid and Barcelona. And the president of Real Madrid, Florentino Perez, is going to be the president of the Super League, and he is believed, John, to have been the person who led this breakaway movement. It has enormous implications. We saw Gary Neville reacting very theatrically and very angrily on Sky yesterday when he learnt of it, talking about greed and indeed talking about tradition as well. First of all, I want your take on it, John. What's your immediate response to it?
Well, I think it's bad, and I think it's bad for the game. I think the timing for these top businessmen, you would regard them anyway, has been dreadful. I mean, at this stage of the season, for example, and the situation that the whole world is in, particularly Europe, in football terms, with the virus situation.
Yeah, just in terms of the timing, they wanted to beat the Champions League. The UEFA is going to make announcements, or we're due to make announcements today about reforming the Champions League, what they call reforming it, by adding 6 more games to it and a few more clubs. So to the knockout phase of the Champions League. So that announcement was due to be made today, which prompted the breakaway group to get in before that. That's the timing of it. Yeah.
Well, it's bad, Eamon. Anyway, I think it's awful. I think Gary Neville was saying greed. I think greed is at the heart of it all.
Yes.
Of this situation. I mean, I always feared, to be quite honest, Evan, for a long time, that this could happen, because what we're dealing with here now are business people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the business people in Manchester United and all the top clubs that have come forward, and it's all about business. What can we make from it? What more money can we make from it? And I'm sorry to say that's what it is, because there's no respect in this particular situation. Now, I'm talking about the game in England particularly, Eamon, where we know now that all those clubs are owned by foreign companies or people.
Well, Spurs wouldn't be. They're owned by a guy called Joe Lewis. No, he lives. He's exiled. He lives in.
Okay. Well, you put me right on that. But he's not there all the time anyway.
No, not there at all.
At all.
Yeah.
So he's a big businessman.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're foreign, the fact is that big businessmen have taken over the game.
Now, your principle about the English clubs is absolutely right. Chelsea, owned by Abramovich. Liverpool, owned by Fenway Sports. Manchester City, Abu Dhabi. Manchester United, owned by the Glazers, of course. Tottenham, owned by Joe Lewis. Atletico Madrid and Barcelona and Real Madrid are the 3 Spanish clubs. So you're right. You're right. In effect, this is led by people who aren't English.
No. So it's a total disrespect, Eamon, for the game in this country and the supporters, indeed. Because if you go back, not so long ago, Eamon, and when you and I played, the big clubs or any of the clubs weren't owned by individuals.
Yeah.
Like when I was at West Brom, for example, the West Brom shareholders couldn't have more than 1 share, because it didn't want anybody to take over.
That's right, yeah.
Originally, these were brought by people who loved Manchester United and loved Manchester City and all the clubs in England. And then, at a certain stage, people came in to buy them for investment.
Yes.
But before that, it wasn't investment. It was love of the game. It was love of their local team.
Or love of being a big shot in your own local community, which is much more like it, John. You're only being polite.
Well, that was like it. I mean, they used to get that when they became directors, Eamon.
Exactly.
But they didn't own the club.
No.
They couldn't sell the club.
Exactly.
Right? Now, that changed. I think Manchester United were one of the first to buy up the shares.
Yes, that's
Mr.
right.
Edwards bought the share ups, and then they sold the club. So it's not that long ago where the revenue for the clubs to keep them going and make them successful came from the supporters.
Yes.
Now, the supporters of today, their granddads and their great-granddads actually had a financial stake in the club through paying through the stiles every week to keep them going.
Yeah.
Now, once these money men take it over, those people who kept the club going for years and years were thrown out, and they're throwing them out even more now. I mean, if you go back to Manchester United, Manchester City, that original supporters, and they're still there, supported the club when it was badly needed.
Yeah.
Now, this is just money. This is businessmen talking. In other words, if we form a league of our own, we're the top leagues, with television and that, and years ago there was no television coverage in that, Eamon. Now it's worldwide, and they know if they can get enough clubs, Eamon, the television people will pay them what they want them to pay.
Yeah, okay, well...
But a total disrespect for everybody involved in the game.
Yeah, well now, my take is a bit different.
Okay.
No, just a bit different. I don't think what we have now is good. I think it's terrible. I think players are being tortured. They're playing in too many competitions. FIFA and UEFA, how is the World Cup being played in Qatar next year in the middle of the European season, November, December? That was corrupt and it has been proved to be corrupt, and FIFA has been riddled with corruption. That's what's happening now. UEFA are responsible for the Champions League and the enlargement of it, which they were going to announce even more today. They're also responsible for the Nations Cup, which is another way of making tired players play when they need a rest. And of course, they're responsible for the European Championship. The game today, where people complain about television, they are beholden to television, John. That's why we're watching 6 or 8 or 10 live games a week now in empty stadiums, and why players are falling down like flies with injuries to fulfill those television contracts, which really are used not for fans, but they're used to beef up player salaries in a big way. So I don't think what's there at the moment is very good. I think it's very damaging to players in particular, and the prices fans have to pay. In the case of West Brom, the club you managed and mentioned, I mean, when they were promoted to the Premier League, they increased their prices. When they were relegated the following season, they increased their prices again. So these people don't give a monkeys about fans, and they really don't care about players either. So that's only a slight difference from what you... But in the broader, bigger picture, I can't see this thing working, John, because one of the biggest things we were going to talk about today was the fact of who might be relegated, who are going to be in the top 4 to qualify for Champions League football next year. In this new Super League, they'll all be in it every year anyway.
Yeah, all right. No, I agree with what I don't think it'll get off the ground, Eamon.
No,
but I mean, I think what you're saying is that this new thing is not it's not going to happen.
Yes,
but what we have
is
greed.
Yes, it is greed. That's what. But I saw Gary Neville yesterday.
I know what you're saying. No, I think it is exceptional. I know exactly what you're saying about the players and the amount of games they have to play. Now, this is an unusual time for us, Eamon, with the virus, and there are more games now than there would be if we hadn't had the virus.
Yes.
I think they still try to make too many competitions, obviously, because the people who run it now are greedy.
Yes.
They created the new Nations Cup because they had a gap year between the champions, the Nations
the European Championship and the World Cup. Yeah.
And the World Cup. So there was a gap in between, so they found another competition for that.
Yeah.
They don't care about the players and what the players are doing. And I think what they're doing there to make the money for the different nations and the different clubs, Eamon, is to stop what's likely to happen or what they're trying to happen now, which is for big clubs to break away.
Yeah,
well, the big clubs are greedier than the people who are involved now, who are greedy enough.
Yeah,
that's the problem with them.
Yeah, well, right now let's look at the proposed new 12 club Super League. They're calling it's a midweek league. They play in midweek, but it would be there'd be so many dead rubbers in it. It's unbelievable. It's ill thought out for a start, but if it were to take off, where would they get their players from? This is the important thing. Where do Premier League clubs, just take Premier League clubs or the top Europe, where do the great players come from? They come from the leagues, the lower leagues very often. The less salubrious Premier League clubs produce the players. So if you cut off that link between this proposed new Super League does, if you cut the link between the lower clubs down the pyramid, which produces players, you actually damage the game. Where are they going to get their players from over a 10, 20, 30-year cycle?
Well, I don't. The answer is from my side. I don't know, Amy, but what I would imagine that if it did happen and they have these super clubs, they buy the players from the teams that are not in the league, Amy, who wouldn't have the money and be glad to get it.
But John, there won't be a Premier League if the six top clubs.
No, but there'll be some sort of a league, Eamon. I mean,
I'm not so sure there will be, John, because who's going to televise it? Who's going to want to watch it? I'm not so sure. English football. Let's talk about the thing we know best. I'm not sure English football is sustainable and would be as wanted by television without those six clubs. And if you take Barcelona and Real Madrid, if you take them off the table, what's the Spanish league going to look like? Atletico Madrid are also signed up, by the way. So that's the top three clubs in Spain. So is the rest of the league worth a television deal?
Well, I think football will always be played, Eamon. Now, whether it's on the television or not, I mean, you'll still have Leicester City, and I'm talking about England now, and all the other clubs who are not in that six. They have to keep going. They're not going to shut up shop, Eamon. And as you know, with kids playing all around the world, and especially in England and Ireland that we know, they still want to play football, and they still have to play them. It's like it's somebody this lad now that's got from Aston Villa, from Bournemouth, one of the lower clubs. They're still producing players, Eamon, and will still produce players, and the big clubs will buy them. Now, that's taking it a long stretch. I don't think football will collapse and people wanting to play football collapse. It certainly won't be the same, but there will be players, Eamon.
I'll put it to you that the football economy would go bust if the Manchester Uniteds, the Spurs, the Liverpools and the Arsenals walk away from it. Let's take the proposed setup these people want for the 12. So supposing golf, and there was talk of it. Rory McIlroy actually didn't go, but there was a tournament proposed to be played in Saudi Arabia, and he said, "I'm not going." They wanted a kind of super duper golf tournament. Now, if you took the top 20 players in golf out of the sport and they played in a private league, what would that do to golf?
Well, it would harm it. Of course, it would harm it, Eamon.
Right,
but would it stop people from playing golf, though? Would it stop kids from playing golf and being great players who want to get into the top?
Well, John, if the economy of football is bust and broken, which it would be if this, in my view, then what are you going to use to pay, to nurture, to invest in a football club?
But they would do. I mean, they would still do that. The prices would come down. You know, before the Champions League was formed in England, what did clubs do years ago when we didn't have?
They aspired to go in the European Cup.
They
aspired to play in the European Cup, but
before the European Cup, I mean, in your time and my time, there wasn't when we started. There was no European Cup. There was no European Cup.
Well,
and we produce. It's harmful. Definitely, it's harmful to the game. But it wouldn't stop kids and players from coming through. I mean, they're coming through now. They don't all come from the top clubs now. There's lads playing in third division, fourth division that are good players that the big clubs haven't got. It's harmful. I'm not in favour of this.
Well,
I'm totally against.
Let me remind you of what it was like before there was a maximum wage. The players weren't properly paid, looked after. Only the BBC and ITV had rights to matches, and you never saw any live football. It was a wasteland before, in what people now like to refer. I'm not accusing you of doing it, as the good old days. The good old days were never very good. And the maximum wage, you remember that? That's
of course I remember it, sure. I was playing before the maximum wage, I mean. But in those days, I mean, look at the players it produced.
Yeah,
there were great players, the great players of the times. You know, when you came to England, the Busby Babes and all the various teams, the Spurs, the great Spurs team that won the double, all that. We always had great players, and the players weren't treated very well. What happened over the years? The players are now on top, more or less, in relation to where they were years ago in my time, in your time. But we probably produced more players, I mean, in England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales than we do today.
Yes, but that was because of the street football and the other. We're not going to get to the end of this, but I take it that you're against this new breakaway Super League.
I'm totally against it, Eamon.
Right.
I'm totally against it. I think it's greed that's involved in with these big clubs that's doing what they're doing, and it will certainly be harmful for the football. There's no doubt. I'm totally against what they're doing.
Right.
I think they should, and I think what the people who are in charge now, instead of creating more competitions, actually, they should be pulled.
Yes, and I agree,
as well,
because that's greed. We're in a situation now where there's greed, and also it's power mongering, because if UEFA they want as much of the players' lives as they can get for. By the way, not paying any money for it.
Exactly.
So we're in a greed situation now. Desperately needs reform, but this is not a good development. And fair play to Bayern Munich and PSG. I think we can agree on all of that, can't we, John?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think also the clubs in the Premier League should be held to account as well.
Yes.
Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea, they should be held to account because they intend to go into it. I mean, the only reason they won't be going into it, then, because it won't happen. But that's not to say they didn't back it and are prepared to do it.
They are prepared to do it.
They should be held to account.
Right.
By the other clubs in the Premier League.
Well, Gary Neville in his rant yesterday, and I'm not knocking him, but he said Fulham they should all be relegated, and Fulham should be in the Premier League and all that. You're not going that far.
No.
Right.
No, I think there should be a lot of thought given to it, Eamon, as to how these clubs who are doing what they're doing should be punished.
Okay.
I haven't got the detail of it, but I think if the other clubs get together, right? Because don't forget, what happens if the Premier clubs chuck them out?
Yep. They won't.
Where did they go?
No. Well, we'll see.
That's another day's work. But I think what's happened with the big clubs here is very, very disappointing to their own supporters, particularly, and to the traditions of the club, where the people of today who support them, their grandparents and great-parents, were there when they were needed, and when they didn't have any other income.
Yeah.
And I think it's disgraceful.
And that's a point that Gary Neville also made, as you did, extremely important. These clubs really belong to the people.
Yes.
and should remain ultimately there for the people. It is the people's game, and I hope, as a result of this attempt to change it and make it the bankers' game, that it will change. Now, John, I want to talk to you about the two FA Cup semi-finals at the weekend, particularly Chelsea beating Manchester City. After 10 minutes of the game, you rang me and you said, Eamon, I think Chelsea are going to win this match. And I had a bet, and I was very grateful for your help. What do you think? Well, first of all, let's look at City. Guardiola made 8 changes, John.
Yes.
And he left out Foden, Mahrez, both of whom had scored in the Champions League, I think. Gundogan, who's been scoring for fun.
Yeah.
Bernardo Silva. He made some extraordinary changes. But tell me what you saw after 10, 15 minutes to alert you.
Well, I said to you, there's only one team playing here. Yeah. Chelsea were good. Chelsea got a grip of the ball. I mean, what we're seeing from Manchester City lately, is dominating the possession of the ball in a big way. Yeah. In a big way. And doing it brilliantly. Actually, at the first 15, 20 minutes, Chelsea dominated the ball. Not quite as much as City did to other teams, but certainly a lot more. City had a lot less of the ball than they had in all the previous matches.
After 20 minutes, Chelsea's possession, the stats were 60-40 to Chelsea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's most unusual at Manchester
Yes,
City,
it is,
as we know, because it's usually the other way around in a bigger way. So Chelsea were very, very good. I think Guardiola made a mistake in making as many changes as he did.
Yes.
Now I can understand it because they played during the week and they played actually very, very well in the Champions League match. I thought they played very well in what was a very dodgy match for them. And they won. They went behind, as you know, and they played really, really well, kept the patience, and went on to win it. Now that was only during the week. He has a big squad, but I think he made too many changes, Eamon.
Right, and
Chelsea took advantage of it in a big way, very good way. This guy, I think, is the real McCoy at Chelsea, Eamon.
Thomas Tuchel, you like him. Yeah. You've been telling me for weeks you've liked what you've seen. He's had a good record since he came in, with the exception of the West Brom game, which you pointed out, where they gave up 5 goals at home.
Yeah.
And a lot of these expensive players they spent 250 million sterling in the summer on. They bought Ziyech, they bought Timo Werner, and they bought Havertz, all from Germany. And they didn't click at all for Frank Lampard. But you think this guy is capable of getting a tune out of him, and you think they've got a chance of winning the Champions League?
I do, Eamon. I think, first of all, they're giving very, very few goals away. Now, if he gets it right at the other end, I don't think that will stop him from keeping the goals down.
Yeah.
And then you've got the perfect team because they haven't done that. Now, but if you're not losing goals, you don't have to score many goals, Eamon, as we know.
Yeah.
So I think he's very sharp. He's very good. I think he demands an awful lot of them.
Yeah.
An awful lot of them. I don't think he's an easy guy to play for. I don't think he stands any nonsense whatsoever. So I think he did a big job at Paris Saint-Germain, didn't he?
He did, yeah. But mind you,
fell out
in a weak league, but with some playboys in the team. Well, one playboy anyway, Neymar, a conspicuous playboy. But he got them to the Champions League final. Yeah.
I thought they were good. I thought he did a good job with them last year.
Yeah.
From what I'd seen at Paris Saint-Germain before. And he fell out. I can imagine him falling out with a lot of people. But I think he's really, really good at what I've seen so far. And I think they can get better if he gets these guys, if he can get them scoring goals, Eamon, or if he can't, to get somebody in who will score goals for him.
Yeah.
In other words, I think when you're a manager of a club coming in, the first thing he can do and should do is get the defence right. Don't concede many goals. And he's done that. Now the other hard part is to get somebody up front that scored. Now, he did get it against Manchester. They scored 2 goals, and sometimes that's all it needs to win matches. But to get the ideal situation, and I think the chairman there, or the owner, will back him if he thinks, look, these guys are not going to do it for me, I definitely need somebody scoring goals. I think he'll get it. And I think then he'll take some beating, Eamon. And I think even this year, he could win the Champions League.
Okay, that's an interesting prediction, John. You were asking me to get the price. I didn't get it, but I'll have a look as soon as this podcast is over. Now, John, the second semi-final, Iñárritu, who's been getting a lot of goals for Leicester, while Jamie Vardy's having a relatively lean time. They beat Southampton, as I thought they would beat Southampton. And you'd have to say of Brendan Rodgers, John, he's a very good coach, and he's handled some of these three players who were having a party the previous week. James Maddison, the England international, very prominent among them. He handled that situation well. He left them out. He publicly named and shamed them. He didn't find them, and then he didn't make too much of a fuss about it. I think he's a very good coach, John.
He's good, and he seems a good lad, Eamon. You know what I mean? He, as you say, say for Mourinho, if Mourinho had that situation, you wouldn't know what was going to happen in it. No, but anyway, I don't want to be too unkind to Mourinho. But I think Brandon is a good lad, and I think he's stern enough in what he wants to do. He knows what he wants, but he doesn't go overboard about things. He doesn't go into the pay. He's not in the papers every day of the week.
No.
So, he's done well. He's done well with them, and he's done well to get to the final. I don't know if you watched the match, Eamon.
I did.
I thought it was a terrible match.
Yeah, well,
I thought it was terrible. And to be fair, Vardy produced the one big moment in the match. They say moments nowadays, Eamon.
Yeah.
To make the goal.
Yes.
Put it on. He made the break, but Vardy is terrific, as we know. I know you love him as well.
I love him, yeah.
But I thought the match was awful.
Southampton didn't really want to come out to play a lot of the time. They just were hoping for a break. But I often find, John, particularly in semi-finals, that Wembley does something. Now, you tell us, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. Wembley seems to do something to players. It's a very, very big pitch. It used to be in our day, they said the turf, but it was lush, which wasn't like the grounds you were used to. What is it about Wembley, John, that inhibits players? Is it just the fact that it's Wembley?
Yeah, I think it's nerves, Eamon.
Right.
It's nerves. The pitch is beautiful. And I mean, it used to be a big thing to play at Wembley, go to Wembley, because all the pitches in those days weren't so good, and Wembley was always great. Yeah. But I don't think there's anything in Wembley that stops players from playing well, Eamon.
No.
Apart from the occasion where it's a very important game, and players get a bit uptight, they don't want to make a mistake.
And semi-finals have a tension of their own, don't they, John? Because you're so near, it tends to...
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, I played in a few semi-finals, and some of the matches were terrible.
Yeah.
But the pitches were terrible in those days, so we had some excuse. You know what I mean, Emily?
Yeah.
Like the semi-finals were at Hillsborough or Villa Park at a time when the pitches were kicking up and it was muddy and all that, all the various things, that you'd have some reason for the game not to be so good.
Yeah.
But it is a very nervous, a high tension situation. You're one match away from Wembley. Or away from the cup final.
Yeah.
No, it definitely can. It can. I mean, I did play in a couple of semis where we're terrible with that, but some good ones as well. But it does get to players. There's no doubt. Which are so near to so near to the cup final.
Yes.
That players do get uptight. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, John. Well, we're very grateful to you this morning. We've had a wide agenda to deal with, and I have to say. That I agree fully with you, and it's worth restating that these 6 clubs from the Premier League who have attempted or are attempting, it's a continuing thing. I just saw them at a press conference, that they must be punished in some way by the Premier League, by the English FA, to lay down a marker that this ain't on, guys.
No, definitely. I mean, there should be some action taken, whatever it can be. I don't know. I'm sure you don't know at the moment. But I mean, there's 6 of them, and that leaves another 12 clubs or something that can, and the Premier League itself.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because if this is not going to happen, which it doesn't look like it, they wouldn't like to be threatened of being kicked out of the Premier League, would they?
No, and if Gary Neville had his way, to be relegated to the Championship. Well, anyway, that's That's all
Let's see.
we have time for. John, we're very grateful to the great John Giles, of course, as always. We're very grateful to you for listening.